what is going on, everybody? How is everybody doing today? Welcome back here today to another episode of the Just Ballin' podcast. Today, I am joined here with Jacob Myers, the creator of the League Him brand. And I'm really excited just to talk about everything NBA draft related, prospect related, summer league related. What's going on, man? Thank you for doing this.
My man, Matt, appreciate you having me on. This should be really fun.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess just also a little bit about you. How long have you kind of been just following at least like high school draft and kind of just creating content about guys that are going to be maybe not the well-known names and then more so just covering the draft as a whole?
Yeah, so it's been about 5 years now. Just marked 5 years 2 weeks ago. We started really hitting on like the sleepers, the guys in college that kind of develop in the shadows, and gradually over time it's evolved a little bit. And this is the first year. We had a big board. We were kind of tracking the guys from the Cooper flags to the Exhibit 10s, right? Like, trying to get a feel for everybody. But it's been really fun. And I think the best part about covering the draft or covering, grassroots basketball, stuff like that, is people are so interested, right? So like there's a lot of different opinions. There's a lot of different evaluations. And it's very fun to debate and, differ in opinion and stuff like that. And it's been really fun to build. And I'm excited for next year already.
No, definitely. I think it's cool too that I'm trying to like get a little bit more familiar with when you're kind of learning about these high school kids that come up and the college kids. It's cool that there's a lot of people that are fans that take pride of like where they come from, because it might be like a small town in North Carolina. It could be like a more of a regional aspect to it. Because if you're just a fan of an NBA team, you're talking about like your LAs, your New Yorks, even like your Miamis of the world. But like you can really get into like the deep just parts of the country that produce so much good talent. And it's kind of cool that there may be similar faces where you may talk about a guy and somebody in your comments may be like, oh, no way, like I played against them or something, or I went to high school with them or middle school. And it's really cool to see like different towns and communities throughout that aspect of like kind of coming up through the NBA roots.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's so many different pockets, especially like just domestically, where there's so much basketball history. Whether you got like the DMV, you got, everyone's got a lot of pride in the New York area. You got Texas, California, Miami. Like there's so many different pockets. That's a great point.
Yeah, definitely. So I think something we can kind of go back and forth, just our favorite maybe draft fits. I think people like you make your big board before the draft. And sometimes for me, like I'll kind of look back at the big board I made and maybe adjust it in a way just because I like the guy's fit so much more. And I'll kind of lead off with, I think, a polarizing prospect for a lot of means. There was some things that were happening not on the floor that were just brought up, and that was Ace Bailey. And for me, I thought Ace Bailey was going to be a prospect that was somebody that relied a lot on his fit in a way too. And I think maybe for him having the chance to grow and get your opportunities more so, even though I would have been fascinated to see him in a team like Philadelphia as kind of like more of a complementary piece to Paul George, Maxey, and Embiid. I'm really excited to watch him in Utah, especially since we're learning that they're kind of going all in this youth movement with Clarkson getting bought out and Collins and Sexton have been traded. And they've had a lot of fun summer league moments so far throughout like the Salt Lake City Classic. And I think now I'm very intrigued to see what Will Hardy is going to do with Ace Bailey and how he's going to be able to grow over there. And I think even though the results haven't been the best just record-wise with Danny Ainge there, I do believe that they have a very smart front office, very smart coaching staff. And I'm really excited to see how he's there. I don't know like where your opinion was on Ace going into the draft. I know a lot of people had different opinions, but I think it's helped me a lot to like really enjoy where he could be in Utah compared to maybe some of the other fits.
Yeah, definitely. I had Ace third on our board, had him top 3 all year. I think, the theatrics got a little exhaustive.
For sure.
But yeah, if we're talking like basketball fit, like I don't think you could find a better fit. I mean, especially for Utah being a team where, they're committed to this youth movement. They've been losing a lot of games and they don't make it past the commercial break of the lottery. And it's like, that's so disappointing. And then to walk away with, a 6'9" shot maker, a guy that, scored 30 points multiple times and a gauntlet of a Big Ten, super raw, young, one of the youngest players in the draft, just oozing with talent, right? Like he's scratching the surface of what he could become. We talk about watching Salt Lake City, like you see it in flashes, right? But I think the foundation of shooting, like a little bit of athleticism, the size he has, I thought he, showed probably a little bit more defense people talked about at Rutgers in flashes, whether it's, rotating for blocks and steals or rotating or, showing some recognition. I think that's a big time talent swing at 5. And I think Utah is probably pretty elated that he was on the board.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think for them, when they went into that rebuild after trading away Rudy and Donovan back in 22, they never really positioned themselves to get one of like a blue chip prospect. And you could talk about floors and ceilings, but I mean, Ace has as high of a ceiling as maybe anybody in this class when he can hit that. And I think that's what Utah really needed to take a swing on, compared to maybe going some of the safer picks they've had in recent years. And last year there was a ton of variance in the 24 class, and they made out very well with like the late pick in Collier and early second rounder in Kyle Filipowski. So I think this is a really good chance to take a swing on a guy. There's going to be so many more touches now because if you're like, you have a weird fit of maybe Collins out there and Sexton and Clarkson, and they want to delegate a ton to somebody that's a 19-year-old kid that's trying to take their shots right away. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see him in Utah. And it might not be a great season record wise for them, but I do think this was like the step in the right direction for where they can be in 27, 28, and 29. And that's kind of where you want to get to. And they extended Will Hardy on a multi-year. So they know what they're doing over there, and they have a vision. So I think that was one of my favorite fits. Like, what would say like something like you really like throughout maybe the top 10 or the draft so far?
I think, Trey Johnson going 6 to Washington. We talk about another team that's committed to a rebuild, committed to getting young guys in the building. I just think, he kind of fits the mold of what they're looking for. They've kind of assembled a bunch of just like young, lengthy, like shot makers, guys with feel, guys with scoring instincts. I liked the pick at Will Riley at 21. I had him pretty high on my board. I just think, for them at the stage they're at, they got Bub Carrington, they got Bilal Coulibaly, Alex Sarr, Keyshawn George was a great draft pick last year in the late first round. I think they're just doing a really good job of building the right way, taking upside swings, getting guys that kind of fit their foundation. And to be honest, I think they might have the best summer league roster in the entire
It's so
league.
good. It is stacked.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I think that should be really fun. I think Trey Johnson's someone, the competitiveness and the shooting is like enough to have a really, really exciting floor. But when you start talking about his ability to like create shots, shoot off movement, his footwork, his touch with both hands, I think he's a solid passer. That's something that got critiqued quite heavily. Situation at Texas wasn't exactly fruitful for him to be a playmaker.
Yeah.
And he's young, right? So he's going to figure that out. But he's someone, watching throughout the year of like the competitiveness, the intangibles, stuff like that. He's someone that really pops. Like he's a fierce competitor. You can kind of see it in his eyes.
Yeah.
So I think he really fits what they're building in Washington. And I think getting talent like that outside the top 5 is usually pretty difficult. So I think the board worked pretty well for them. And I love that. And then Will Riley, someone that really came on at the end of the year for Illinois, kind of became their playmaker towards the end of the year, playing on the ball. Kasparis had a wrist injury, had a little bit of struggles turning the ball over, separating off the bounce. And Will Riley was big time, Big Ten tournament, some big time road games in February, and then one of his better games against Xavier in the NCAA tournament. So I think that's a great upside swing at 21 as well. But yeah, Washington, I absolutely adore what they're doing.
Yeah, me too. It's really cool to just like to see the summer league roster too. I pulled it up. And it's just like you see Kadari Richmond and Keyshawn Gilbert and some guys that were just so much fun to watch last year that weren't like high pedigree prospects, but they can really make a name for themselves in summer league. And I'm really excited to watch like Trey and Bub, kind of just two guys that excel so well off ball, and like they're never in the same spot on the floor. I think like Trey Johnson and reminded me a little bit of like Jared McCain when he was at Duke, and I feel like he moved so well off screens. He moved so well with the ball in his hands, but also without the ball in his hands. And I think that's so valuable at the NBA level when you want like what Sarr is going to be for them in the long term, and you have some other guys like maybe Bilal Coulibaly and what he's going to be for them long term, and you want guys that can get open, guys that can cut, slash, that could just move so well. And I'm really excited to watch that in Washington. Like another team like Utah, that records may not be the best record because they have such a young team. And I like what they've been doing externally too, like bringing in Marcus Smart and Chris Middleton and TJ McCollum, and guys that are very respected, that are going to have great careers when it's all said and done, to be like the next leadership for this core that's been maybe not having like a great veteran presence because it's been such a young team. So I'm really excited about Washington next year, and I think they're going to be a really fun team, even if like the record doesn't show it, just because you're just going all in on development right now. And even like Jameer Watkins in the second round, I thought like with everything that was going on with Florida State last year, right? And like I think he's like a true professional, and I just somebody that will die for loose balls no matter what, that will switch on to anybody defensively. He's going to be fun.
That that to me was one of the best value plays in the draft. Getting him on a
Hmm.
two-way. Not all the contracts aren't exactly out yet. We'll get a
Yeah.
good feel for that after today and tomorrow before summer league
Hmm.
gets rolling in Vegas. But I mean, I had him early 30s. He's older, so it's kind of difficult to take those guys
Yeah.
in the first round. But we talk about someone that can switch, can heat up the ball, makes plays off of the ball, has great feel for the game, secondary playmaking, and then he rebounds. He's tough. He's competitive. He's one of those where like he's at Florida State and they weren't very good. They had a chaotic season. There was some
Yeah.
off the court stuff that was going on in the media and about like NIL, and there obviously it was Leonard Hamilton's last year, but he was kind of asked to do way too much. So he's the primary option for them at Florida State. So his analytical profile wasn't very strong. He had more turnovers than assists. His 3-point shooting was low 30s. But then you kind of zoom out and you're like, well, this situation wasn't exactly replicant of what it's going to be at the next level, right? He's going to be
Yeah.
the fifth guy on the court. He's going to be, like you said, diving for loose balls, defending high level scores, rebounding, and just making simple reads. And he also was like 40% from spot up threes past couple years. So I think that's someone definitely for the draft sickos. That's a good sleeper to monitor, especially
Right.
being on a two-way. I wouldn't be surprised if he's someone that ends up on a guaranteed contract within a year and a half or so. But yeah, I love what Washington's doing. And then you mentioned Bub Carrington. I think he's very high on the list of like, oh gosh, this guy's way too good to be playing a summer league.
Oh, for sure. We're gonna get to that point.
Yeah, I mean,
After
he
like the
almost
first game
looked
or
the
two.
part last year. He had like triple double in his first game of summer
Yeah.
league. But
Yeah.
I'm enormously high on Bob Carrington. I think he's a big time player. The
Yeah.
size, the instincts, the feel, and then the pull up shooting. Right, like he's you mentioned it. Like OKC is getting a bunch of guys that can initiate, play make, score off the bounce, and then they have a center that's kind of unique where he can play on the perimeter a little bit. So Will Dawkins comes from the Oklahoma City tree. It's hard not to see some parallels in the way they see the game. So yeah, that should be really exciting. And I think you talk about fans or people from different communities commenting on stuff or engaging
Yeah.
with content, and it's like Washington has such a rich fan base for the draft because
Yeah.
they've been kind of committed to this rebuild for a couple years now, and I think they're on the uppity up or whatever it's called. I think their
Mhm.
fans are gonna be really excited watching them in Vegas.
Yeah, definitely. It has to be one of the more exciting times in recent memory with all their young core, the draft capital, the flexibility they're going to have. Definitely. And summer league's going to be a lot of fun for them, for sure. Because it's cool. Because you'll look back, you may not realize it in the moment, but like I know it's been brought up a lot recently, like the Lakers summer league roster with Lonzo and Hart and Caruso, and you see these guys and their careers. And you look back and it's like, wow, they've come so far when they were like 18, 19, 20-year-olds in summer league. Um, Another favorite fit for me was, I think, just what they needed positional wise. Come on, my watch going to the Phoenix Suns at 10. I thought there was a chance he could have gone a lot higher in the draft. And for a team that needed probably a rim protecting center as much as anybody that was picking in that range, Phoenix got their guy. And I think it'll be good for Kaman too, because I know like he got a late start to kind of playing basketball, and he's had a really cool like upbringing to Duke and playing under John Shire. And I thought last year, with everything considered, he was really good, and I think people will go too much into the deep analytical numbers, and sometimes there was a low block rate. But I think when you look at the games, like there's a lot of players that are just scared to shoot around him because he kind of has like that Wemby college effect where he has such a long arm radius and long just block radius too compared to some of the other big men in this class. And I think what Phoenix needed last year, and they had a rotating carousel of centers, and nobody really was going to be a long-term play at the five. They really got somebody that can kind of man the paint, can set good screens for Devin Booker, who's going to be there for a long time, set good screens for Jalen Green, and they can have the athleticism to play off each other as well. I thought Phoenix had a really good draft as a whole, because you consider the Mark Williams acquisition, and now you have two centers. You have Nick Richards from last year, so now you have at least a center depth. And I loved Kobe Brea in the second round as well. I thought that was a phenomenal pick, like one of the best shooters in this class. And if they ended up moving off from some of their veterans, they could definitely use Brea, who I think could help them right away next year, because they seem to trust like Oso a lot last year and Ryan Dunn a lot last year, who were two rookies. So yeah, Kaman was definitely one of my favorite fits, just because I think he's never going to be like, there's not going to be like a roadblock for him getting 25 minutes a night. He can get that throughout the course of his rookie year. And I think somebody that will benefit going through the ebbs and flows and the ups and downs of a rookie season.
Yeah, I mean, Kaman's pretty simple sales pitch, right? I mean, he's a
Mm.
giant.
Yeah.
He's a towering young man, but I agree with, like, the block rate, stuff like that. Eye test, or you can even go to like on off numbers for like the team. Man, like, people didn't drive in the lane when he was
No.
in there because he's such a presence. I think
Mhm.
it's pretty easy to see him playing a winning role in the NBA, catching lobs, like you said, huge catch radius, and then defensively, he can put a lid on the rim. And I think there's also a little bit of upside when, he showed, it's tough with the bigs, right? Like, everyone
Yeah.
sees a big. I went to one of his workouts in Chicago, and I posted, it was a shooting workout. He did like a bunch of
Yeah.
like footwork stuff, touch around the basket, and then he did a bunch of shooting because that's what he's working on a lot. And the comments, like, it's so volatile, right? It's like all these people are like, all right, he's gonna be a 40% 3-point shooter on a high attempts, and then there's people who are like, he can't shoot at all. It's somewhere
Yeah.
in the middle, right? With the bigs, it's all about like getting the game speed down where they can do their shot prep and get their feet set. Because they are so big, it's never really an issue of getting the shot off. It's just kind of like picking up the timing. Um, I'm confident like he'll be at least like a trail three kind of guy. Like, think of like a Brook Lopez type deal, or later in his career, kind of a slow catch, shoot it. But like, he
Mhm.
made some shots in FIBA when he was playing over in Africa. He would shoot the basketball. I mean, last year in the Olympics, I think he had a face-up jumper on Joel Embiid maybe, or Anthony
Yeah.
Davis. But yeah, he has some touch to him, and then with being a two-way anchor, that's super valuable, like you said, especially for an organization who's been scratching for a big man like that. And then I'd also add Rasheer Fleming, right?
Yeah.
31. He kind of got shopped across the league. A lot of teams are curious to see where he'd go. He ends up going with Kaman, who's also with Clutch, to Phoenix. And Rasheer Fleming, late bloomer, 6'9", 7'5" wingspan, shot 39% from three, really enticing physical tools, on a good developmental trajectory, someone that's still getting better. So yeah, I think that's definitely an exciting draft. And, Phoenix hasn't been assembling so many young guys throughout the years before last year, Ryan Dunn. So hopefully they can continue to show promise with these draft picks. And it's always nice to see players that, people have a gravitation towards go to an organization, like you said, where it's probably pretty realistic to see them playing early.
Yeah, definitely. I should have mentioned Rasheer Fleming. Forgot about him in the moment. I was a big fan of him. Because like just I live in Philly, so he was close by at St. Joe's, and his athleticism pops out. The wingspan and standing reach are obviously incredible. I had a feeling, like no intel whatsoever, but I kind of had a feeling maybe teams would be questionable about the fit, and he would like fall a little bit. And I was like, maybe he would fall like into the 20s. I maybe thought Brooklyn would take a swing on him with one of their picks in the 20s. Do you think like there's a sound reason why he maybe fell as much as he did? Because I didn't think he's better than the 31st ranked player in this class. So I thought Phoenix got tremendous value there. But I just maybe think it's like, okay, it's a weird fit. Maybe not a super large sample of him being a great shooter. Maybe not a super large sample of him being a great ball handler on the offensive end of the floor. So do you think there's like a sound reason, or it's just kind of one of those guys that just like was never number one on people's big boards when it got to that range, and was always like 2 and 3. So they always got their guy, and he just kind of kept slipping.
Yeah, I think you alluded to it. Canvassing the league throughout the end of the season, he didn't have tremendous momentum. He
Hmm.
started to really struggle with foul trouble towards February, and then in the
Hmm.
Atlantic 10 tournament. So yeah, I think there's a certain level of skepticism with the shooting. And then with the ball handling, the creation, we see these playoffs, right? It's like everyone needs to be a threat. So I think
Yeah.
there's certain teams where they see someone who they question his ability to attack a closeout. So like, and maybe if they question the shooting, they're like, all right, well, maybe this isn't our guy. But I'm personally with you. I had him higher than that on my board. I think being a late bloomer, being someone who's late to the game, he doesn't really have as many high level reps as some of the guys that got drafted at his age. He just turned
Yeah.
21, I think. Um, he got recruited out of the layup lines at Camden High School, as their coaching staff told me. Really late to the game. Played with
Yeah.
DJ Wagner, Aaron Bradshaw. Like, I think there's still room for him to grow. So I think I agree with you. I think there could be some great value if you're looking at a guy who can shoot it at a decent clip with those physical dimensions. He's going to be an asset defensively, and then I don't really think it has to be that advanced off the bounce, right? Like, if he can straight
Hmm.
line drive and he has one or two simple moves with those dimensions, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? Like, he doesn't need to be breaking
Yeah.
guys off the bounce with that
Yeah.
level of physical tools. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, NBA teams have their reasonings, but there's always good value in the second round. We saw Jalen Wells be one of the more productive rookies
Yeah.
in the entire NBA last year, and a lot of it does come down to situation. So I'm intrigued to see how it goes, and I'm hopeful he can continue to make those strides in his game.
Yeah, definitely. Like 31st pick a couple years ago was Andrew Nemhard to the Pacers, so you could definitely get good value for sure in the early second. So outside of like Trey Johnson and Washington, what was another favorite draft fit for you in this class?
If we're going fit, I would say there's some really good ones when you go through. I would probably go Johan Berenger at 17 to Minnesota. Him and Sorber. I'll kind of touch on both. I'll start with Sorber because he was the higher pick. Thomas Sorber out of Georgetown. Man, you kind of had a feeling like there's certain marriages between a prospect and an organization that kind of jump at you. And, ever since the winter, it's kind of like, all right, well, OKC probably wants to add a big, right, with the financial situations they're in. They potentially were going to have that high pick. I think it was the Philly pick. If it was a top 6 protected. So at a certain point when Philly was still winning games, you're like, all right, well, they might, be in the mix for like one of the premier guys
for
in
sure.
the class.
Like imagine Trey Johnson or something on OKC.
Exactly. Or it would have been incredible. One fit that I thought would have been pretty fun is like Derek Queen throughout the year. It didn't end up going that way.
Yeah.
But so they get Sorber, another guy that kind of, chiseled his frame as he got to college, like really developed in the later years of high school, was always kind of a bruiser, really physical, and just fits the mold of what they look for in players. He's super physical. He has tremendous instincts, 7'6" wingspan, and he's young, right? So I think he landed in a perfect spot to just, I'm sure he'll play with the blue a little bit this year, and I wouldn't be surprised within 2-3 years we're seeing him in a playoff series having a big role, just because he has such a strong foundation. And then Johan Berenger, a little bit different. Late bloomer. He's only played organized basketball about 3.5 to 4 years, from France. Just someone that really shot up draft boards throughout the season, playing in Croatia, I think. Or no.
It was this, was it Slovenia or Croatia? It was this.
He's playing Slovenia with,
Slovenia,
I don't know how to pronounce the team.
It's like Cedevita,
yes,
something like that. Yeah,
Cedevita, something. I was just watching all the U19, so all my countries are
Oh my god, right? Yeah.
But yeah, just like super enticing athlete, like super rangy, twitchy. I mean, but he's still kind of figuring out how to play the game. One of my favorite clips of the year from him was like he catches a rebound and he like throws an outlet pass directly to the other team. Like just telegraphs it, and then they go for a layup, and he just sends it, right? So it's like kind of shows you he's still new, but to land in one of the best organizations in the NBA from a front office perspective in Minnesota with Tim Conley, Matt Lloyd, and then you have Rudy Gobert mentoring him, right? So you have another Frenchman, another big man. So I think he's in an awesome situation to learn and develop. They can afford to be patient, but that foundation, we're looking at someone who super versatile defensively. Big time lob threat because of his athleticism and length. I think he has a 7'4.5" wingspan, 6'11" barefoot. So, that mix is super intriguing. You're talking about adding him at 17 to a championship contender. Like, that's a no-brainer for me.
No, definitely. I had Sorber written down, and what I like about Sorber and Berenger's fits too, as you alluded to, just like them, learning from just already good level centers. Like they added Minnesota specifically, Berenger and Sikorsky in this draft, 2 guys that maybe aren't going to be NBA ready for a playoff series, but it's going to be okay because you have one of the best rim protectors in the NBA in Rudy Gobert, and you can kind of add on the margins if you needed to throughout the year if they aren't ready, but they'll have time to grow there. And I do trust, like, for Minnesota, if this was a pick they made 10 years ago, you're maybe a little skeptical about it just because they didn't have like maybe the best drafting track record in the late 2000s, early 2010s. But Tim Connolly's done a great job at the helm, and even before him in the Rosas era, like they've done good job drafting over the last few years. So I'm really interested to see it work out. And Sorber, I love, like, incredible athlete, like. And I wonder how the offensive game is going to develop because I believe in the jumper. I don't think it's like far off that he could be low 30s from 3. At least somebody you have to somewhat respect out there. And then he can put the ball on the ground. He's a great rim protector, and it'll probably benefit him playing with the blue. But if you look at like maybe what Sam Presti's eyeing in a few years with the CBA and the second apron and them paying their young guys, he could end up being the starting center in a playoff series in 3 years if Hartenstein isn't there anymore. And I think that's what they were looking at. And they're a team that can afford for him not to play meaningful minutes in the first year or so, and he can really develop with the G League. So I'm a big fan of that as well. I had that one written down. One other one I had was in the first round was just Carter Bryant to San Antonio. I think For Bryant, he's such an interesting prospect too, because you could see a really good basketball player in him, and he is a good basketball player, but like the stats wouldn't really be an eye popper to you for what he was doing. Last year under Tommy Lloyd at Arizona, he was more of kind of like a catch and shoot guy that had a lot of ball dominant guards. They had some talented big men down low, and Bryant was more of like a perimeter guy who had great catch and shoot numbers. But you could see the physicality, the strength, like the bruiser like mentality to get downhill. Like there's flashes. And yeah, I know it was more of like a shot creator in high school, and this was a completely different role. But when he's going to be going to San Antonio, I don't think it's going to change too much from what he was doing at Arizona, because Fox, Harper, who they took it to, Castle, Wemby, all these guys are going to be high usage guys, and he's going to be getting phenomenal looks. I think it's going to be great for his development. But they also need somebody that can be a little bit more physical down low on the defensive end of the floor. And I think that's going to be a really good complementary piece next to Wemby. So obviously I love Dylan Harper as a prospect in general. It wasn't a hard selection for them to make with Cooper Flagg off the board, but them getting Carter Bryant at 14, I thought was really good value and fits them really good long-term.
Yeah, definitely. You watch Brian Wright's press conference, and he was like, "We're a little surprised he was still on the board."
Yeah.
So they thought he'd go a little bit earlier, but yeah, Carter Bryant's one of those guys. You look at the numbers, and maybe you're puzzled, but if you turn on a game, within a couple minutes, you're like, he's an NBA player, right?
Right.
Like, he's 6'8", got a near 7-foot wingspan, chiseled frame, fluid, jumper. He's all over the place defensively, physical on the glass. So yeah, I think it's a seamless fit. We talk about, we're kind of cheating, right, with these fits. We're picking all the good organizations.
I know, right?
But that's the reality, right? So him to land in such a fertile, developmental setting, and then right, like it's just he's so versatile. He fits the NBA. I think he just got to develop a little bit more with his ability to attack. But
yeah,
he showed a little bit of that in high school. But he's interesting, right? He's someone that his tendencies in high school would actually turn off a lot of evaluators. He was someone that loved the mid-range. He's breaking guys off the bounce. I interviewed him back in high not compared himself, but he loved studying like Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, these like Devin Booker, like guys that really create. Goes to Arizona and just was very team first, right? Sacrificed his own kind of ambitions as a player. Not that there's no ambition in doing what he did, but he had a very simplified role, and he impacted winning. He was very efficient in his minutes, knock down shots, cut, rotate defensively. And I think it's very easy to envision that translating to the NBA. And then, man, for San Antonio at their stage, to add two players like that in the lottery,
it's crazy.
Rich get richer.
I know, right? The Western Conference, like between them and Houston and OKC, like the young cores that are coming out of the West right now are incredible. And you kind of just hit there, like him transitioning to more of a different fit at Arizona. And I think for the second round too, a lot of guys that I love that get drafted in the second round were kind of role players in college, right? Like one of my favorite fits in the second round was Tyrese Proctor to Cleveland, who wasn't a ball dominant guy. He was more of a connecting piece. He was more of a swingman on the perimeter. He can knock down threes. He can hold his own defensively. He can handle the rock on the perimeter, but he kind of knows his role, and he knows his limitations. He's not going to ruin a possession as often as you don't want it to. So I thought him going to Cleveland was a great fit. I think it's tough for some guys that are like the guy in college. And I get questions all the time, and you're like, why isn't RJ Davis or why isn't Caleb Love getting drafted super high? And you've gone through your Marcus Howards of the years, right? I'm like, these guys that were Cassius Winston, that were some of the best college scorers, like we're going to see for some of these programs, but it's tough for them to change their role completely when you go to the NBA level and you're asked to go from 16 shots a night to 4 shots a night. So I think like Tyrese Proctor was one of my favorite second round fits. Did you have one that you really like that you think kind of fits because of like the role that they could play in at the NBA level?
Yeah, honestly, I love Proctor going there.
Yeah.
We talk about someone who went through adversity in college, comes in as a ball handler, he was really a wing, right?
Yeah.
Like this year, knocked down shots, made smart reads, and then, defensively he showed some growth. He's still going to have to prove a little bit there with his narrow frame. He measured in really light at the combine. But yeah, if he's strong enough and physical enough, I think it could be good value for them. They're another organization, right, who's done a really good job on the margins, right? They've identified players they think can succeed in their, program. And then also, they played, I think something for the fans didn't realize is, day 2 of the draft now is very ran by agents. There's a lot of deals that are kind of done by draft night on day 2 that, so yes, he went in the
He
40s. He
was
went
yeah.
49, but like that was kind of right.
You're
Like
right. Like the behind the scenes of that has to be fascinating because like you even hear stories
yeah,
for like Austin Reeves in the past, right? Like he doesn't want to get drafted because when you're an undrafted guy, you can basically you're a free agent. You can sign with any team that you think you and your agent view as the best fit for you. So it's got to be like fascinating, like hearing that on the second round because you may love a guy and you can obviously just take him. It's like they're going to play for you most likely, but there's a chance that they're trying to kind of go a little bit further down or they're trying to go undrafted instead of being like pick 50 or so.
yeah. So I had a good read last year that that was what was happening. 40s, 50s.
Yeah.
I heard this year from a couple different teams, kind of in that 30s range, that like it was real prevalent. Like agents were
Yeah.
really sending their guys to
Interesting.
situations they wanted to. So that's an
Yeah.
interesting thing to track. But yeah, I like that pick. We talked Jameer Watkins. That was probably one of my favorite. If we're just talking value, to get him on a two-way
Yeah.
with what he offers, I think there's a lot there. Chaz Lanier, 37 to Detroit.
For sure.
Man, another kind of late bloomer. 2 years ago, he averaged 4.5 points a game, right, in North Florida.
Hmm.
He goes on to average 20 a game the next year, 50, 40, 90 splits in the Atlantic Sun, I want to say that's conference.
Yeah.
And then goes on and somehow has like a better year for
Crazy.
Tennessee.
The
Jerry
best
West Player of the
conference.
Year. Yeah, like just like a really impressive dude. One of the more mature, kind of cooler journeys. Someone I interviewed throughout the process. Talked to him at
Hmm.
North Florida, and it's been cool to see his rise. Another good fit, I think. It's intriguing. Um, I think we've hit on most of the good ones. I'd say Brooks Barnheiser, like to OKC, is someone that watch him in college. I didn't really know what to think of the shooting. So
Yeah.
there's someone where like I didn't really know where to put him on my board. But you talk about seeing a landing to a system. When they announced his name in the draft and it's like Oklahoma City Thunder, Brooks Barnheiser, I was like, I should have had him higher on my board. I think
Yeah.
I might have had him like 49 or 50, maybe in the 50s. But he's someone, if he can shoot it, I think he'll be able to thrive in their, G League program. And they've done a really good job of investing into their two-way guys. And then another
Definitely.
player, Elijah Martin's a dog, man.
Yeah.
I would say Cam Jones to Indiana.
Great
That's
fit.
probably the one I'd hit on. One of my favorite fits in the draft. Indiana's done a great job, pouring into these experienced multi-year college guards. And,
Yeah.
Cam Jones really evolved throughout college. When Kolek was there, man, he was really a dynamic scorer.
Yeah.
Uh, this year, ran the show. I mean, there's a lot of games. He had like 10 plus assists, passing with either hand. He's tremendous finesse and craft in the lane, floaters, reverse pivots, like very crafty dude. And then he just seems to have a certain level of toughness that's needed to thrive in the
For sure.
NBA. And I think that's a good one. I'm sure there's some other ones we could hit on, but Duthiero has tremendous talent going to the
Yeah.
Lakers. Probably one of the more talented players in the second round. If we're talking mere talent, like, it's someone, he's a little bit injured right now. I don't think he's gonna be playing in summer league, but like
Hmm.
if he was fully healthy, I think he's safely a first round pick.
Yeah. He's one of the best
Um,
athletes, I think, in the class.
man, what he also has a really cool story. He was like a point guard in high school. He
Hmm.
was like 6'3" up until his junior year. He went from like 5'10" to 6'3". Now he's like 6'7", 6'8", 7 foot plus wingspan. And like you said, I honestly think he's the most disruptive athlete in the entire class. I mean, the things he
Yeah.
does when he's healthy, the strength, the explosiveness, and like the ability to cover ground, he could be a ferocious defensive presence.
Yeah, no, definitely, and I think the Lakers for sure need that, and I'm excited to watch them this year. And I really like one last one was Jemai Mashak. I thought I was a little bit higher on him, and I'm glad like a team like Memphis that it's funny because you look at their track record over the last like since they drafted like Ja, they've kind of hit more on their second round picks than their first round picks. So I'm really excited to see Mashak. I know I think he had like 8 fouls or something last night in the summer league. It's funny seeing those stats, but he's somebody that is going to be, oh my God, he's going to be such a disruptive defender. And whenever I'm watching Chaz Lanier, or you're watching like Zakai Ziegler last year at Tennessee, Meshack always stood out to me as somebody that is just making the plays on the defensive end of the floor. And it just feels like a Memphis Grizzly and a team that has had such a good drafting track record in the second round. I was like, this is a great fit. Like, I love this a lot. If like the Knicks took him, like my Knicks, I would just like, you know what, maybe he's going to spend more time in the G League. But I maybe Meshack does play this year for the Grizzlies. So I'm excited about that fit. I guess more so for we can kind of hop to summer league. Just guys, maybe I have a bunch of guys like written down that I'm just intrigued about to watch. over the next few weeks. Some guys from like the 23 draft class that maybe have not had the best like first 2 years so far. Maybe somebody from the 24 class that didn't have a great rookie year. I think like quickly, like the Jazz as a whole, there's a lot of interesting names. We've talked about Ace. Cody Williams, I think, was a very intriguing name to watch throughout summer league, given how he was very up and down in his rookie year. And I think it's somebody that you want to see try to be a little bit more creative with the ball in his hands, a little bit more confident driving downhill. And in the summer league, and even next year with all those veterans gone, he should have that opportunity. And obviously the star has been Bryce Sensabaugh, who had such a good end to last year's season. And when he's been healthy, he's been a lights out shooter. And just going back to like Clarkson, Sexton, they're all gone. There's a chance Sensabaugh could be number 3 on this team in shots next year. And he really stands out for sure. So like, are you kind of like what you're kind of feeling maybe the Utah Jazz and like some of those guys that we haven't touched on yet?
Yeah, they should be super fun. We're getting a little bit of a preview in the Salt Lake City. I think I just watched the game this morning. It felt like Bryce Sensabaugh had like 80 points. I think he had like 35 or something. 37.
Yeah, 37.
He broke the Salt Lake City scoring record. But yeah, I mean, another guy struggled to stay healthy. But man, what a like just lethal shooter. His touch, his ability to get tough ones off or make tough ones look easy. I think they should be really interesting. Like you said, Cody, you hope to see a little bit of development from him.
Definitely.
I don't think he's playing, but one guy in Utah that no one really talks about anymore because of injuries is Taylor Hendricks. I still have belief, have a little bit of belief held in him being someone that I think was a 10th pick in the draft. Super versatile, 6'10", fluid jumper, ability to do some things defensively, rebound, and offensively kind of be a little bit of a play finisher. I think another team. Are we? I mean, anyone else we should hit on with the Jazz? I'm trying to think. We forgot a name.
I think like Clayton. Like there's just like the Claytons, the Collier, the Filipowski. I think like though the people that
Collier's been good, man.
Yeah, no, like he can handle the ball so well, and he looked a lot better yesterday than their first game. So I was so high on Collier in that class, and he went so late. I'm like, man, maybe I'm evaluating him completely wrong. But he's been really good so far. Definitely outplayed his value.
Yeah, and then the team I would bring up, we talked about some of their players, but I think we already talked enough of Washington. Washington's probably my if we do the summer league pass or whatever, number one for me is Washington. We're talking about a starting 5 of Bub, Trey Johnson, Will Riley, Keyshawn George, and Alex Sarr. I mean, that's like they're gonna be playing that.
Those guys, with
AJ Johnson off the bench, like that'll be their 5-man lineup. Same with the Jazz a little bit, but like those are the lineups they're gonna be playing in the actual NBA. So that should be really fun to watch. I think watching Bub and Trey Johnson play off each other is gonna be dynamic. But another like crazy 5, I think we're gonna see, and kind of touching on some of those like 2-year guys is Minnesota will probably have a 5 of Rob Dillingham, Terrence Shannon Jr., Jalen Clark, Leonard Miller, and Johan Berenger. Which is, man, what a fun 5. You have the shot making from Rob. You have the like ferocious defense and transition scoring and quickness from Terrence Shannon and Jalen Clark. And then Leonard Miller, man, one of the more fun prospects in recent years, being 6'11", lefty, can shoot it, can play make, can attack closeouts. Defensively, he's all over the place, getting steals and blocks. And then we talked a little bit about Berenger, someone that I think more of the college fans probably don't have a feel for him. I think he could have some explosive plays that, give him some good fans after summer league. But yeah, those are kind of the teams that come to mind for me. We got the preview with Utah and Salt Lake City. Another guy, probably Topic, has been fun to watch.
Like it's fun to finally watch him now.
Yeah. And I think, you obviously don't want to, I see some crazy takeaways already. It's funny. You get like people on Twitter are like, don't overreact to summer league. And then they'll say something crazy. Right?
Yeah. Oh my God. I know. Like it's funny. I love VJ Edgecombe. He was my 3rd-ranked prospect, but he's like the next like coming of Ben Simmons in Philadelphia. It's just like, we got to be patient and you want to overreact, right? Like it's so much fun to watch these guys, but it's Reed Shepherd was the star of the show last year and he wasn't on an all rookie team. So a lot can change in a year for sure.
Yeah. I'm in the vein of like, hey, they're playing the games for a reason. I'm going to watch. I'm going to react, but like I'm also not going to be crazy. But I do think Topic, being someone coming off of that injury, I think he's looked pretty solid, right? He's getting
Definitely.
downhill. His feel is high level, man. Some of the passes
So
that
good.
maybe aren't assists, but just like
Hmm.
getting downhill, creating contact, creating an open, creating a window for someone else to score. And then AJ Mitchell has been
Yeah.
awesome.
Oh, too good for summer league.
Yeah,
He's so good.
mid-major second rounder, one of the steals of last year's draft. Kind of crazy to think him and Jalen Wells, I think, went back to back, 37,
Yeah.
38, or maybe he was 39, but within a couple picks.
Yeah.
But yeah, Washington, Minnesota, Utah. I want to see Mogbo for Toronto. I'm a big fan
Yeah.
of him. What are some other teams that pop to you? Summer League's the best.
Dude, it is. It's so much fun because you got so much talent. Like, especially if you're just so into the draft or college basketball, because you're seeing names for the Wizards, it's just like Leaky Black's on the squad and Kadari Richmond and those guys. And they had Zeke Mayo's on the squad too. So I'm intrigued about like Brooklyn. I'm just excited to watch like all the international guys and all their draft picks come together. How are they going to look? How's the
Yeah,
the ball movement going to be with Demon, Seraph, and Traore?
I like
Um,
Yegor.
yeah, yeah,
I'm high on
yeah.
Yegor.
He was tough for me to like evaluate. It's just like were you at his workout?
Yep, yep,
Yeah, and I know
yep.
he killed the workouts, right? That's what I was reading.
Honestly, yeah, the pro day was impressive, but I just think it was he became so polarizing, right? Because you
Yeah,
have someone that was so loud in non-conference against inferior opponents, and then he
yeah.
really struggled against certain teams in the Big 12. I kind of just remained in the middle throughout the year. Had him top 10 the entire
Hmm.
year. I was being called stupid. I was getting crazy DMs. The comments on the posts would be vile. But, talking throughout, different friends across the league throughout the year, I think there was more stability in his stock. People really like didn't see it at all or they saw it, right? So he's polarizing. But I
Yeah,
think the foundation of playmaking, youth, the feel is so incredible. I mean, this is a guy with eyes on back of his head, side of his head, his shoulders,
yeah. I
his
thought he was the best
calves.
passer in the draft, and he's also what
Yeah,
he's 6'9" without
he's
shoes, or
yeah,
he was 6'8". It's incredible.
he's a legit 6'9", long arms. I think defensively with that length, something I think that stood out to me last year is guys that were pegged as non-defenders in college
Hmm.
having early success defending in the NBA, being Jalen Wells and
Yeah,
Keyshawn George, two guys that
yeah,
were by no means stoppers in college at Washington State and Miami, respectively. But with the NBA being so spaced out and everything's just so quick, I think length and awareness and like an
yeah,
IQ for the game can take you a long way and maybe offset some athletic limitations if you're able to be in the right positions, have the right technique, and just learn, right? So if you're able to learn quickly as a young guy in the NBA, you stay on the floor longer. But I get people that don't see it with Diego, right? Like he was
yeah,
someone had top 10, but then you're doing mocks or stuff, and you're like, well, some of the team fits could be tricky. I thought the best one was Brooklyn, and he goes to Brooklyn at
yeah.
8.
Right.
Kind of a blank canvas as a team. They just get Michael Porter Jr. I mean, what better to pair a 6'9" pass first guy with someone who's never seen a shot he didn't like, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
um, and Brooklyn should be really fun. Nolan's super speedy downhill, kind of
Yeah.
the ideal pairing to put with Yegor. Someone that struggled to separate a little bit, struggled to put pressure on the rim. Someone that's just gets downhill effortlessly like Nolan. And then Danny Wolf, if we're talking just the basketball, I thought that was tremendous value late in the first round. Drake Powell, rangy wing. Um, Ben Seraph, I was a little bit lower on. It seemed like the
Hmm.
consensus, but he's certainly got a certain level of talent. Being a guy that he led EuroBasket last year in scoring, really can get to a basket off the bounce, has some good feel. But that's definitely an interesting team.
No,
Using all five
definitely.
first team I think ever. I mean, it might have been
Yeah.
since the
No, first
merger.
team
Yeah, to
to
use
do
all
that.
five first round picks. It's crazy.
No, it is. It's weird because like my draft takes for them were like I don't love the or I don't love the class, I don't hate the class. I just think it's just so fascinating just to see how they're all going to play together. Because like in a vacuum, I see the upside in Demon, I see the upside in Seraph and Traore, but I'm so intrigued to see how they're going to work together too. Because all of them have the size, the ball handling, but they all kind of had questions with their shot. So I wonder like how they're going to be able to play together. And I mean, like Jordy Fernandez did a great job in his first year last year, so I think they're going to be a fun team to watch, regardless of the outcome. And then I kind of just had down like couple guys from the 24 class. I had like Deron Holmes coming back. I'm interested to see how he looks. I believe he's on the summer league roster. So I'm excited to see how he's looking off the Achilles tear because I thought he was going to be such a big ad for Denver last year.
Yeah, that was a devastating injury. I
Right.
want to say he drilled 2 threes to open summer league, and then he tears his Achilles. That was awful
It's
to
horrible.
see.
Yeah.
Awful to see. But yeah, he's super interesting big man. One of those kind of adaptable, good feel, move a little bit, do a little bit of everything. I'm excited to see him for sure.
Yeah.
I
I had
think
him down. Sorry, go.
New Orleans as well. Like
Yeah.
Fears and Derek Queen. A lot of talk's been made about the trade they made to get him. They showed a lot of
Mm-hmm.
conviction. They traded an
Yeah.
unprotected pick to move up 10 spots. But I mean, come on now. Like we're talking upside.
Yeah.
Derek Queen
No,
and Jeremiah
they're,
Fears, they should be running through summer league.
yeah.
With the playmaking, you got Eve Missy. I think we're going to be seeing Derek initiate a little bit, throwing lobs to Eve. That should be a really, really fun team to watch.
Yeah, definitely. It's crazy how much like the public perception can change because I think people aren't going to give them hate if Derek Queen turns into a good player, right? And I think a lot of people believe that Derek Queen will turn into a good player. So there's a chance that Derek Queen is like the star of the show in Summer League. Like, I would not be totally shocked if he's like one of the 5 best players or one of the best looking rookies in Summer League, given his offensive feel for the game. And I'm really interested to watch New Orleans, another team that I didn't like love or hate the draft class. I mean, like you look at the talent they got with PV, Fears, and Queen, like it's incredible, but it's just, yeah, like what they gave up externally with the pick, but that's not going to care or that's not going to matter if Queen turns into what he can at the NBA level. And then what else? I'm intrigued to see Kobe Buffkin in Atlanta. I was a big fan of Kobe coming out of Michigan. It hasn't been the best 2 years so far. Injuries have played a lot into that, but I'm hoping there's still a role for him in Atlanta because when he got drafted, he was behind Trey and DeJounte. And I thought, you know what, maybe it's not going to allow him for opportunities, but can also be a good place for him to grow between 2 guys that have made all-star games in their career. But yeah, it hasn't been like the best start, but I'm still really high on Kobe Buffkin because he was so much of a fun scorer to watch at Michigan. I just need him to stay healthy for this season.
Yeah, definitely. I was intrigued by his potential as well out of Michigan. Spent 2 years there. Came out pretty young. He was a young sophomore.
Yeah.
So it's always disappointing to see the guys that need those reps get injured when they need the reps, right? So
like he
I hope
definitely did.
I hope he can stay healthy. Being a guy that he's got the long wingspan, he can pretty dynamic off the bounce, crafty, and then defensively he has that potential because of those tools. Yeah, I hope he can have a great run through summer league, get some confidence, get some good reps, and lead a team who's had a pretty momentum turning offseason, right, in Atlanta.
Yeah. No, definitely. And then quickly, I have like Ryan Nembhard of Dallas, undrafted guy. Steve Settle on the Miami Heat, Temple Owl, got to represent my alma mater there. So it'll be cool because Settle's got size, he's got range. And the Heat are just a team that always finds these undrafted guys. So I'm hoping he's the next one. I got Dig Pate, Tower Smith, and Johnny Furphy, some guys that I'm also intrigued to watch. Any of those guys that like stand out to you, or any last guys that you're interested to watch in summer league?
Yeah, those are some good names for sure. I think the one I forgot to mention, AJ Johnson for Washington on the bench. I mean,
you're really excited to watch Washington in summer league.
Yeah, like
I mean,
they've seemed to draft all the players I've been high on. So there's certainly some bias there, but
mm-hmm.
when we talk about those traits, the length, the feel, fluid athletes, those are things I'm always attracted to with the blend of instincts. And he had some dynamic games last year from Milwaukee. Ends up getting traded for the Kuzma deal.
Yeah,
but it's just going to come down to sometimes it's funny, like the summer league rotations play a big role, right? So like teams like that, they got a lot of players to play. So it'll be interesting to see which guys get off at certain moments. But then any other players, I'm trying to think guys from potentially last year. Jalen Tyson for Cleveland, he could be really good in summer league. I don't think we'll be seeing Castle, but
probably not. You're probably too good now.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anyone else. Yeah, Toronto, I want to see. I like Mogbo. And then 2023, let's see if I can get one name.
Yeah,
Mogbo should be really fun.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think is Shed playing? Yeah, Shed. You have Jacoby Walter, oh my god, like the defensive Mobo, Connery, Boyles, and Cheddar all out there, and they have Chucky Hepburn. Oh man, and Elijah Martin, they could roll out like the best defensive lineup in summer league for sure.
Yeah, I think we kind of hit on most of the intriguing teams. Certainly, guys are going to pop up. Jalen Clark is another deep cut. Someone
Yeah,
that struggled with injuries a little bit, but showed flashes. Could potentially be someone that plays for Minnesota.
definitely.
Yeah, but yeah, we kind of hit on most of the good ones. This is
Yeah,
high
yeah,
level
I'm
for the
excited.
junkies.
No, definitely. And then I guess like lastly, just like we can kind of briefly talk about the 26th draft, just a little bit too early. Look at like outlook on it. We just had the U19s, the FIBA World Cup, and obviously Mikel Brown was a big standout for Team USA. AJ Debinsa, or Mikel Brown's going to Louisville. AJ Debinsa is going to BYU. He won MVP. And I would say like Koa Pete was also another big standout on Team USA. He'll be going to Arizona. Were there anybody like that became like more on your radar, or just anybody that like really stood out to you for next year's class after watching those?
Honestly, no.
Yeah, because a lot
Mikel
of the big
Brown.
names like stood out that were going to like Brown was a big name, Debance is a big name, Pete's a big
Yeah,
name.
I was fortunate to see most of have a good feel for the high school guys going into that. You
Yeah,
obviously still watch it, right? You want to see these players develop. I think Mikel Brown certainly was the most impressive. I was
definitely.
surprised he didn't get
Me
MVP of the
too.
event.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, top guys for next year: Darren Peterson going to Kansas, AJ going to BYU, Boozer going to Duke, Nate Ament going to Tennessee, and then I think that 5 spot again. It's way too early. Like so many things happen, and
Yeah.
this is not like a concrete thing. But I mean, I'm doing my way too early board, and I think Mikel Brown has taken that 5 spot for me.
He's on the same for me too.
Yeah,
His athleticism is unreal. And you add him like a kind of a shifty guard that can get downhill. And if that shot is gonna be like as consistent as you'd hope it's gonna be under Pat Kelsey, like he can really be the best, well, I guess maybe the second best guard in this class after Darren Peterson.
yeah, he's just kind of like so well rounded. He's a fluid kind of ball handler, so he can change speeds. Man, the passing with both hands. He had this awesome
Yeah.
dart with his left hand, full court live dribble pass to AJ. He's just a very well-rounded point guard. Pushes the pace, gets others involved. Lethal three-point shooter off the catch, off the dribble, and then the athleticism. Right. I mean, there's some simple plays to me that really stood out. Just tracking his growth throughout
Yeah.
high school. I think he had one in the championship game against Germany, who in their own right had a pretty good run. Christian Anderson
Hmm.
will be a
Yeah.
good returner at Texas Tech. Steinbach going to Washington should be really
Washington.
productive in the Big
Yeah.
Ten. They have a couple other guys that are going to stay in Europe that should be interesting. Eric Rebe going to UConn is kind of like a really fun
Yeah.
offensive skill set for
UConn's gonna
their.
be good because they have Jacob Furphy, right, and they're gonna
Yep,
have Braylon Mullins. They're
they've
gonna be
really
good.
started to take players that fit the system they want to run. So
Yeah.
Eric is someone that, a 7-footer that can, face up, score, has some finesse, some good feel. He can make passes out of DHOs. He can keep it out of a DHO. He can shoot it. He hasn't been like, an lethal shooter, but he's shown a willingness to shoot it. I'm curious to see where they go with him. But yeah, Mikel Brown, I mean, it was really dynamic. I think he was probably the clear standout. And it
Yeah.
was very quickly to see it, but it's just I've learned in the past couple of years to be a little bit careful with the FIBA stuff. It's more so like a check-in rather than like a final statement. Like your
Yeah.
evaluation watching FIBA, you kind of want to jot down names, right? Like let's see how he goes throughout the year. But there's a lot of cases where players were, I mean, not to throw a stray, but like an Arthur Kaluma in FIBA,
Hmm.
like was so dominant a couple years back, and maybe never took the strides people thought he was supposed to take. So I try to watch the FIBA stuff with a grain of salt. It's fun to watch.
Yeah.
USA really ran through it.
Yeah.
They won by like 30 against a good Germany team.
Yeah. It was
Trying to think of
the Canada game, right? Was like the best or the closest game they had. They were down by a little bit in the third quarter too.
yeah. It's gonna be interesting to see. Someone for me. This time last year, I probably thought, maybe 15 months ago, I thought AJ was probably the best prospect in the world.
Yeah.
That sounds dramatic. Best prospect, regardless of class, within like the Coopers and the Dylans and the Boozers and Darren. And over the past year or so, like his shooting hasn't developed the way I've hoped. But he's still, 6'9", twitchy, long strides. He's awesome in transition. Defensively, he should
Yeah.
be able to do anything he wants. So he's gonna be really fun to watch develop at BYU. But Darren Peterson's really, really risen. He's someone that like was real. It's very rare. He was anointed at like 14, 15 as like the guy in his class coming out
Right.
of Ohio. And to
Yeah.
see someone like that maintain such a like maniacal approach towards development, I mean, I was watching him at Formula Zero Elite Camp last year, which is Damian Lillard's like select camp.
Oh, okay.
Best high school and college guys. VJ Edgecombe was there, Asa
Yeah.
Newell, Rasheer Fleming, some really high level high school players. And Darren was the best player in the entire event by a wide margin. I mean, he's coming off the bounce. He's like left hand floaters, reverse pivots. Like his skill level and his craftiness is so high level. And then he's
Right.
really explosive. I mean, he can reject a ball screen, throw it down two hands. Defensively, he has the tools. I mean, he's I think 6'5", 6'6", 6'10" wingspan. So
Yeah.
it's going to be a really fun class to watch. And I think someone that maybe the average college basketball fan hasn't seen much of is Nate Ament going to
Mhm.
Tennessee. Another late bloomer,
He had a
6'10",
late
high.
growth spurt, right? Because he
Yes.
was kind of like a guard at
Yeah.
one point, and now he's 6'10".
Yes. It's funny. I was having a conversation the other day. Like, it's difficult to like compare late bloomers, right? Because it's so situational. Like, you can be a late bloomer like Nate Ament, where he was offered by Duke as a sophomore in high school, right?
Yeah.
Like he was on the radar. He wasn't like an unknown, but he has
Yeah.
been someone that like was very thin framed, and he's
Mhm.
kind of grown into his body. Then you have like the ultra late bloomers, like a Jalen Williams, who like people don't know who he is as sophomore year in college, and then he
Yeah.
becomes an all NBA guy. It's looking like, or Jalen Wells, or a Cedric Coward we didn't talk about, who I love. Memphis going and getting him, being a team that potentially has 2 top 10 picks next year. We talked about their prolific rate hitting on these second rounders. I love them taking a swing on Cedric, but yeah, Nate is someone that he's taking a lot of strides. He's an East Coast guy. We're both East Coast guys, so I've been able to see
Yeah.
him quite a bit over the past 2 years, and every time I'm so impressed with not only his approach but his development. So I think the shooting with him and the feel for the game with his size is a really promising foundation. So I love that he picked Tennessee. He's going to be challenged defensively. He's going to need to get stronger this summer. He's been on campus for about 3 weeks now, but he's someone definitely people can't overlook. He has big time upside.
Yeah.
He's just not as far along as some of the other guys. It's funny watch him at Hoop Summit practice in Portland in April. Like I was like, man, Nate is killing it this week. Like I was like so enticed with his development, and then even during like the game, like just the movements and like his process, I was so impressed with. And then I actually went back and watched the film like 2 weeks later, and I'm like, oh, he did nothing in the game. So he's one of those. It's like it's still some of his stuff is still an idea, right?
Yeah.
But like the picture of what he could become in a couple years or even a couple months is very enticing. Any other guys, or I guess, what are your thoughts on how much you've been able to watch of the top guys in next year's class?
Yeah. I've been able to watch like at least like more of like the well-known names throughout kind of like the circuits of obviously the McDonald's All-American game, when you can't put too much into because they're just kind of like out there in an all-star game atmosphere. A player that I didn't know much about until like the Nike Hoop Summit was Tunde Yesufu, who's going to be playing at Baylor. And it's I don't know if it's like lazy to say now as a take, but he does play exactly like Anthony Edwards, and I find it so fascinating that he can get downhill. He plays with so much energy and intensity. And I think there's a really good game he had against, I want to say it was Tyron Stokes, but I could be completely wrong, in high school. And it was just them going back and forth. And Stokes will be maybe the best guy in next year's class. And he's somebody that I think is going to be so much fun to watch under Larry Drew next year. That's produced first round pick after first round pick with Keontae George and Jacoby Walter. And I think he's going to be, and VJ Edgecombe, obviously. And then Yesterfield, I think, is somebody I'm watching a lot. I really like Kareem Lopez, too, playing in the NBL. 6'9". He's got like almost a 7-foot wingspan. He can cut well / well. He played last year, like 17 years old at the start. He's part of the next gen stars. Their like select program in the NBL. Yeah, and that's produced like LaMelo's been a part of that, and RJ Hampton over the years. So I'm excited to watch him a ton next year. And then I'm really interested to see who turns into like the best big of this class. Because like you have Chris Sinak in Houston, you got Quintain's at transferring from Arizona State to Kentucky, and I don't know. I think there's a lot of like it's up in the air who could be the best big. I know like Thomas Haw, Alex Condon, some of those guys coming back to school are ranked fairly high. JT Toppin at Texas Tech. I think that's going to be an interesting storyline, like who kind of emerges as maybe the best big. Well, actually, I guess I could have said it's Cameron Boozer, but like maybe the best like true center is what I was more so going for. And then Bennett Sturts, I'm excited to watch at Iowa because he was so much fun to watch at Drake and his rise, and he'll be playing under it's Ben McCollum right at Iowa next year.
Yep.
They're gonna be
Awesome
they're gonna be
coach.
they're gonna be so much fun, and him going from Drake to Iowa and playing in a good conference now. Like the Big Ten is no joke, and he's somebody that has incredible IQ. And I will say I was a little shocked when you look at like Jonathan Gavoni or Sam Vecini's like big boards. He's ranked in the top 15 on everybody's big board. So I'm fascinated to watch. I don't know if you've gone that deep into your big board yet, but I'm really interested to see the rise of Bennett Sturts next year.
100%. I thought it was really, what's the right word? Telling that I watched the interview of him. Like, he didn't want to test the process. And,
Yeah.
I've been talking about this with various scouts or like trainers with like some of the guys in college right now that are kind of on the radar. And I think it's become a little bit of a competitive advantage to like stay put between seasons in college. That's, I have a college basketball background. That's kind of where I learned, gained a lot of my perspective. And you can make real gains from year to year just within the developmental program of college. It's why college has been such a fertile ground for these NBA prospects, is because
Totally.
you have a devoted schedule. You have most big time programs have high level nutrition where you're getting enough food, enough protein. You're getting smoothies made for you after workouts. You have personalized strength training. You have managers and GAs and assistant coaches that are willing to work you out, 3-4 times a day.
Yeah.
Like, everything is tailor made for you to make that jump. So sometimes these players that maybe aren't ready yet for the NBA, but they still go through the process and they do workouts, or they go out to LA with their agency, or they transfer. There's nothing wrong with transferring, but some guys that just stay put, like Bennett Sturts, goes to the summer. He's going to be acclimated for the Big Ten. I think he'll be one of the best players in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
His pick and roll game, his feel, his shooting, like he's very well rounded at the guard spot. I would say the thing that sticks out to me the most next year is probably, the big four at the top, right? So you have Darren, AJ, Cam, Nate. I haven't put out a board yet, but I'm looking at one right now. I kind of have a rough draft of where I have guys. I'll probably aim to have something out in the next month or so on YouTube.
It's still so early.
Yeah, it's difficult. I'm going to do it because I think it's fun. I think it's fun for the fans. Really like watching them, but it is just like, it's very fluid. But I think the returners really stand out. A guy like LeBaron Philon, Tyrone Riley, Tommy Hawk for Florida, Isaiah Evans, Yaxel, Cam Williams, who transferred to Kentucky. There's a lot of really fun players. Alex Condon should be, really productive for Florida. And then a pair of big men you had me thinking with the bigs. Magoon Guath returning to San Diego State. Him and Bird should be fun. Guath is a very intriguing talent. And then Theom transferred from UCF to Cincinnati. He's someone NBA teams really like. His shot blocking, his ability to cover ground and, be a lob threat. That's a role, like we said, like those simple roles sometimes are a little bit scarce in the draft.
Right.
A lot of bigs now are like Chris Senak, right? Is someone who can really, play make off the bounce, play at DHOs. And, some teams just want, for lack of a better word, I say this, with love, because these are the bigs I love, but like garbage big men, guys that, set great screens and they open up angles for your guards and, they rim run and they rebound and defensively, they make plays. So I think it should be really fun. It's something, it's my first year really covering the draft from like 1 to 150, right? Like I had a lot of fun covering the sleepers, and this year I got kind of tired of talking about certain players. So it gave me a little bit of joy to now start doing more deep dives and, kind of looking back at my notes from some of the top high school guys at USA Basketball, Hoop Summit, and then, diving into the returners, right? So I think it should be really fun. It's going to be way better than the next class, right? So we got to cherish this next year. Right now, the next draft class is positioned to be a little bit weaker. Obviously, sleepers always emerge, returners always emerge, but from that high school class is a little bit weaker than this year.
Yeah.
But it should be really, really fun. And the best part is all the guys are in college basketball. A lot of the international
I
guys are
know,
coming
right?
over. Declan Daru from Germany just committed to Texas, another
Hmm.
European prospect. So it should be really, really fun.
Yeah, next year I'm really looking forward to the 26th class because like when we were talking about like I feel like last year, when we were talking about the 25 class, you had obviously Cooper and Ace and Dylan and Traore was up there in the top five talks and VJ Edgecombe. And we're gonna look at this class differently in a year from now. Like a lot's gonna change. Nobody will get it exactly right, and that's what I think I love so much about the draft process and kind of looking into it. And nobody like the smartest GMs have made bad decisions before in the past when it comes to drafting. And these guys are gonna have really, for the most part, are gonna have great college careers, and they're gonna be a lot of fun to watch in that specific lens. And then it's a whole different ballgame at the NBA level, and it'll be cool to like watch these guys grow because I didn't really get into the draft too much until like I was always like a casual draft guy up until like 23. And then last year, 24 was when I was like, okay, like I'm going to try to make top 60, 70 big board. I'm taking notes for all these guys. And then I'm like trying to watch like Cholet basketball and T-John Salon. I'm like, I have no idea what I'm watching compared to like after watching like a Yves Misi game at Baylor. So it is
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, right. It's so different like with basketball compared to like football. And obviously other sports are more global too, where it's a completely different style of play. So you have to know exactly what to look for when you're watching like maybe somebody play at Real Madrid or like what Dominic Sarr was doing international going into college, or you're watching Nolan Traore play in the Jeep Elite League and or no, it's, over at St. Quentin. And I don't know, it's just so different every week, which makes it really cool. But I think it's got a big learning curve for that reason.
100%. And there's a lot of nuance, right? So it's fun each year to grow and, get a better feel. Even in college, there's different. I think that's something that is underestimated when making boards and, projecting these players is, the college to NBA is not a direct
Yeah.
translation. It's much different games. Even guys' roles can vary from team to team in the same conference.
Hmm.
Players are asked to do much different things. And then internationally, like you said, it takes a little bit of work, a little bit of sweat equity to like really get a feel for like, all right, what is this in Spain versus Italy, right? Like
Yeah.
how do I really value this? And it's a fun game to play. I would say, my kind of, you like doing the boards because it's fun to track, right? Like I get a lot of questions pre-draft from like more of the NBA side, like the NBA media, like people that
Yeah.
follow the teams, and they're like, this guy fell or this guy rose, and it's like, the reality is like everything up until the draft is kind of a little different data point. So like nothing is concrete in July of 2025 for the 2026 draft. And I think looking at the board in the top, 10 or whatever, like we could have Michael Brown at 5, but like, that is a tougher archetype of guard historically to make it in the NBA, right? Like I love his game, but like there's always like these wings that teams get enticed by.
For
So I
sure.
think
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think they've proved it yet, but looking at a guy like Caleb Wilson going to North Carolina, Koa Pete going to Arizona, or Nick Kaminia going to Duke, or Dame Sarr, or Kareem Lopez, like you had said. Like there's always some wings that are going to emerge, and
Yeah.
then yeah, it should be really fun to watch. I hope Jaden, who transferred to Kentucky as well, I hope he can be healthy, man.
I know, right?
Uh, Very difficult injury for him, but he's certainly one of the more interesting talents with his physical tools and the defensive stuff that he showed at
And he's still
Arizona.
so young.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Arizona State is
right.
17 years old, and he's blocking shots, getting dunks and stuff,
Crazy.
passing. Yeah,
No,
he's
definitely.
he's one of the more unique talents I think I've scouted in the past couple years. I remember watching him at USA. He actually decommitted from Kentucky, so he was going to go to Kentucky originally with Coach Cal.
Yeah.
And I remember his decommitment came out like gives fans a little bit of behind the scenes of like the politics and how things go down. His like decommitment announcement came out in the middle of a practice at USA
It's crazy.
in Portland. So he's someone that has had a lot of utility with kind of his pre-draft stuff. So I hope he can have a stable ground. I absolutely love Mark Pope and his staff at Kentucky. The
Yeah.
players they're identifying, the way they're playing. But if he's healthy and the rest of their team's healthy, they should be one of the more fun teams to watch in college basketball, like
Yeah,
usually.
definitely. Yeah, no, for sure. Because I'm looking too, like Duke is gonna be so good again next year. Houston's gonna be so good. Like this is probably the best like draft talent I think Kelvin Sampson's had with Harwell and Tugler and Uzan and Sanak.
Whew.
They're going to be so good next year.
I didn't even realize, honestly, when you just listed those 4 names, that is a really fun 4. I mean, even Florida, right? Like they go and get Boogie
Oh my God,
Fland and Princeton Lee at Princeton, and then they bring back 2 first-round picks and Hauk and Alex Condon. That should be really fun. And then another team that jumps up to me is maybe they don't jump to me. I can't even remember. I'm trying to think. Yeah, Florida, Purdue. Yeah, Purdue should be awesome.
Oh, yeah, dude. Purdue's going to be good.
Braden Smith is kind of a sneaky NBA prospect. You know, he's 5'10", but he's got super long arms, and he's just – the way he commands a game is reminiscent of some of these – you mentioned at the onset of the show some of these, like, floor generals that the college fans love. I wouldn't be surprised if Braden is someone that, you know, gets a 2-way or gets maybe even a guaranteed contract in the second round just because his ability to, you know, initiate a second unit and his toughness. But yeah, college basketball should be super fun. And then BYU, I think, is the one team we should hit on.
For sure.
They go and get Rob Wright from Baylor. Wright. They got AJ. They got NBA pedigree on their staff, down from the head coach to their analytics to their strength and conditioning. I think the Big 12, the SEC, the Big 10 with their new West to East Coast. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of fun teams in college basketball this year.
Definitely, because they got Keba Keita, who reminds me a little bit of like a Dembona at UCLA, just a bruiser who's going to run up and down the floor, and Richie Saunders is coming back. Like, BYU is going to be really good next year. Like, shout out to Kevin Young. Like, that program, I feel like was obviously it's had its like glory days with Jimmer and everything, and they've had their moments for sure. But now they do look like a formidable team in the Big 12 that can actually rival Houston next year. And even like for Purdue, like Omar Meyer, like his game for Israel in the U19s, like he's going to be a sharpshooter for them, and they're going to be fun to watch. I mean, college basketball's in a good spot. I think 23 when I was into it, it was just like you had it was like the San Diego State Final Four, and you had FAU, and it was a little bit different because it was more of like these underdog stories. But now I think last year we saw all 1 seed Final Four, and it's a lot of powerhouses. But I think it's deep. I'm hoping the ACC is better this year. It should be better for sure. Compared to like, I don't know, maybe it's just more so because the Big Ten has added teams. Well, they've all added teams, but I don't even remember how many teams they ended ranked last year. The ACC, I don't think it was more than 3. I think it might have been Clemson, maybe have been ranked, Louisville and Duke. So hopefully a little bit more out of them this year. So it'll be fun either way. And yeah, thanks for hopping on, man. This was super fun to do. It's always fun to talk draft and summer league and college. I'll leave a link to all of Jacob's stuff in the description on YouTube and the audio platform as well, man. And anything else like kind of you're working on or you want to hit on?
Nah, I appreciate you having me on the show. It's awesome time for, you know, the basketball fans, especially the college and draft fans.
Yeah.
With, you know, you get to see the young guys develop in summer league. You get to hear people like you talk about next year. You start to get excited for college again, and it's right around the corner, right? We'll be seeing the big time exhibitions in October. You know, the college calendar has moved up a little bit. Should be super fun. Yeah, on the radar for me. Doing some grassroots stuff this week, but you know, content wise, probably have a 2026 way too early, you know, mock or board, whatever you want to call it, out on YouTube at League Him over the next, you know, couple weeks. Not next week, probably. I don't want to make any promises I can't keep.
Yeah.
We're trying to get it pretty in depth, but yeah, a bunch of that, and we do a watch list every year heading into the college season for some of the more under the radar returners. We'll be working on that, have some cool interviews with players, some film sessions with some of the top guys going into next year. But no, I appreciate you having me on the show. Big fan from afar. You're absolutely killing it. It's been fun to watch your rise, and I think you got an awesome community of people that, you know, keep in touch with your stuff. Ryan Hammerhead showed me your content a while ago when we were talking about, you know, people that were killing it in the media space, doing things the right way. So I'm appreciative of, you know, you invited me onto your show.
Yeah, no, dude, thanks, man, for sure. And I'm trying to like, because I think for more so, I do a lot of NBA stuff, and I think the draft could be a lot bigger. I think college could be a lot more bigger in terms of like NBA fans like coming over and watching college as well, because you see that overlap a lot in college football and NFL fans. So I'm hoping to bridge that gap, and we could just get more people watching college hoops, because I think it's a fascinating game, regardless if these players are getting drafted or not. So thank you for saying that, man. I appreciate the kind words, and same to you. I think what you're doing is amazing, and I think it's really cool to follow your stuff and everything going on between workouts and high school and college. And I think there's such a cool aspect of the game of basketball for that. And it's cool to see you killing it as well. So yeah, thanks for hopping on, man. I appreciate it. And we'll catch you guys later. Peace.